So in controls, basically the controls are like different predefined controls which we have in .NET, where we can actually use them directly for some functionalities. Like you have text boxes, toolbox, you have a checkbox, right? You have list. There are so many controls which you can use directly, and also in our .NET editor, right? You can also use HTML controls or the validation controls. There are many controls which we have. We'll actually see a few controls of which you can use, and the basic properties and different events which get triggers, and what are different type of events which you have in different controls now. So let's create a new project, and let me call it as web. We have material form. Let me call it as web underscore controls. What is web controls? So now you can see our web controls here. Let me right click and make it as a startup project. Let me create a new page here. So this is my web form or a web page I have. Now as soon as you go here to the toolbox, right, you can actually see many options here to select. Now all these are nothing but your controls which you can actually use. Right? Your standard is something which will give you a standard controls like a tab, button, a checkbox, right? You have image, you have image button, you have panel, you have table, you have text box, you have XML, and so many things. Right? So this standard is something which as we use most of the time for a page, right? Different controls will be here, and you have a data controls, right? Where you can directly connect to your data sources, right? Like let's say we have SQL data source, right, which will be connected directly to few sources like GridView, right, and get directly data. We'll actually check out how it is how it will actually work, right? And they have some validation controls, right? Some navigation controls like sitemap, and you have menus and all, right? And different web parts too, right? Where you can directly, get different zones into different parts. I mean, different pages. And these web parts are mostly inbuilt direct web zones we have, which we can directly use in page. We see this part too. And you have login. I mean, in login, you have direct authentication page which you have, that which you can directly take and use the service for that, right? And your reporting. Report where this is something which is again an important one, and most of the projects use reporting, which is normally called RDLC, right? We also see this control too, and in general you have HTML controls. So whenever if you want, you can actually and if you want and which you want to run on client side, right? You can actually use HTML controls wherever you want. And there are few things in general. I mean, if you want to use, and if you want to create your own set, right, you can always do that. You can just right click on this and say choose items, control the toolbox item you want, and add whatever controls you want to that, right? So in that way, you can also create one of the toolbox main items with your own control set. When I say your own control set, so we can also create something called custom controls, which we are going to see in our upcoming classes, right? Just take a second, just cancel this, right? And we'll see them as it comes. Now let's start with a few controls. The first, let's start with a simple text box and a button, which we have already seen, right? And we'll see different properties now in this. Let me take two controls at a time, which is your text box and button. So in our text box, the main properties which we have is a few controls like text box, button, and checkbox, and let's say radio and your different label and all, right? We'll see in a deep detail, because if you can understand the first few controls as such, right, the properties and the behaviors of different controls, right, will understand the same way that okay how they are actually going to be, right? So this text box, let's click on F4 to give properties, or you can also give right click and properties, so that it will actually give you all the properties that you have, right? So in this text box, right, there are many properties you have, where we have already seen this auto goes back. By default it will be false anyways, right? Because text box will actually cache up your data, right? But if you want, as soon as you want you enter data, or you want the data without actually you doing a post back, right? Then you can always make it true, so that on focus or off the focus it will actually be the event to post back, right? So that is your post back which you'll be using. And so this is for the post back. So let's for Sam, let's make it as true here, right? And now you can see there are more, like your text styles, right? You can actually make it solid. I mean, it is something which is appearance of a text box, right? But normally we don't control this from here. Rather, we control this from our CSS, which is stylings. Right? But basically, you have a few more things called read only. Right? We'll come to read only what exactly it is. Now we have a text mode, a very important one, right? You have multiple text modes being provided, right? Basically, main text modes are single. You can actually make this as a single line text box, where user can actually enter only one liner, or you can have a multi-line. Fine. And or you can also have a password. Password is something where you can actually use this text as a password, which will be automatically masked, right? And you have date time, email. If you have an email, it will actually take the email option only. If your email is not provided correctly, it will actually give you your type. You are actually setting your type of text box based on your requirement. So that is your type. Let me keep it as a single line. And one more thing which you have is a max length. So this, you may be using this, because max length will actually put a constraint on this text box that okay, you can actually use only so many characters. So let's give max length as some 5. Let's say I'm saving that, which means this can allow you only 5 characters in it. Right? So let's run this. So this is your page will be loaded, right? And you can just write something on this. You can see it is not allowing me. So I'm trying to type, but already 5 characters are done, but it is not allowing me to type. Now this is something which is a max length. You can actually set your max length to your text box, right? And the event part we have already seen. Let's take one more control here itself, which is label control. Let's do the button here. Let's say. So this label control is the one which is used to just display some information to the user, right? We can't have any other usage with the label. Instead, we can actually show the information to user, what exactly is going on, what is the status, right? So here in this case, let's say, let me double click on button. When you double click on button, it will actually give you the button click URL of your button. So let's say here I'm going to write the label one text, right? Let's say text is equal to, let me call this button click, and let me call this a break here. Right, where I've filled my label with text. Right, same way, let's go back, and the text box, I can double click on this. So based on whenever you double click, right, so there can be any number of events, right? If you go to properties and check the thunder symbol here, right, there can be so many events, but the main event, whatever triggers as soon as you change some data on it, let's say in button, the main thing is you will be using this button to click, right? That is the main event you're looking. So it will be actually registered. Same way, whenever you double click on text box, it will give you, let's say, your text change, which means what are the main event which can happen? You can actually change your text. That's the reason why it is actually providing this type. So let's give this to label again. Let's say it is label one.text is equal to, let me give the text box from whatever I have in my text. Right? Let's run this. Right? We have a label. Initially I don't have anything. Let's say when I click on button, I have button clicked. But when you change something, right, and remove the focus, right, it will automatically give you the value of it. And anyways, we have actually restricted this with, I can't type in it because I have restricted this. So this is your text change event, and this is your button, which we have, right? And now in text box, right, if you make it, if you want something to be shown by default, right, you can always do that using your text. Let's say you have a sample text, let's say, right, you can give a sample text here, right? And let's say you want to make it read only. I can see if you make it read only, which means it will actually make this control as non-readable. But normally text box is the one which allows user to enter some data to read and get it. See here, I'm not able to type in, I'm not able to tell you. I can just read this text box. That's it. This will become a read only text box. Fine. So that is a text box with a property corridor. Same way, in your button, right, you have many other stuffs actually. So button we have seen to just to, you know, whenever I click button, I was actually populating your control. But we can actually use button to move between pages. I mean, we can actually give, there are some properties in button which will actually make your page navigation. Now you can see you have a property called postback URL. Right? So this postback URL you can mention here to move from one page to another page. So let me create a page, one more page. Let me call it as page 2. Right? And let me say this is page 2. Right? And this is a button. Let's say, let's change the name. Let's say it's a click button, right? Where when I click something, some action will happen. And let me take another button here, right? Now let's say I'm going to change this name. Let's say go to page, right? I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to event. I'm not going to use any of the event. Rather, what I'll do, I'll use a postback URL. Either you can add it from properties window, right? You can directly, it will give you all the pages option you want to select, page 2, or go to the HTML part source. Now here, if you are more interested towards writing a HTML tags rather than using properties tag, you can always do that. You can see postback URL is equal to, as soon as you do, it will actually give you an option to, it will give you an option whatever pages are exposed. Otherwise, you can always pick your URL. See, it will open the same model. Let's say I'm going to say page 2. Now this is how we provide a postback URL to a button, which will take us to, let's see that. Now this is a simple button click keywords and all. When I click on go to page, you see it will take us to the next page. The following page, whatever we are actually looking for. Okay. So this is your button control, where you can have different properties for your button control. You can see here, right, which is a right, and there is one more thing called your enable, right? Sometimes you may have to keep your button enabled and disabled, right? Like let's say in your default or the SQLs, right? Let's say nothing, no button, other button should work, but only your go to page button should work. But then you won't be able to click on this button. Whenever you say enable is fast, which means you have disabled your button, which means you can see you will not be able to. Sometimes we always use this whenever we have, whenever I click on this and let's say I don't want any other user to click it again. Let's say you're submitting some transaction, some online billing, right? You can click only once so that your event will trigger, and that's it. And no, you should not allow one more click, because if there are multiple clicks, you may get it wrong that your transaction happened multiple times, right? So this is something where you can actually go to the properties and do, or if you want to make it enable, and whenever you click on this, if you want to make it disable, you can do that. So here I can go to button one.enable. You can see all the properties, whatever you have, right? You can actually set directly from here, right? From code or from also from here, right? Here you can see you have property for enabled, right? If you want, you can click it, right? From wherever you want, you can actually keep it, right? So let's run this. So what I've done is, as soon as I click on this button, I'm doing some action and disable it. Click on this. See here, the action happened, post back action happened, and my button went to disable state. Right? And click on go to page, and obviously it will take you to page 2. So this is something which is your button control. Fine. So let's go to the next control, that is your button control, that is your label and your text box. Perfect. Now let's go to the next control here. Let me create a separate theme, and let's see something called your, let's see the checkbox. Normally, why do we use checkbox? If you want to select multiple items, right, to do some action. Let's say you are submitting your resume, right, and you want to select your competency level courses which you know, right? Like technologies you want to submit in a form, right? Then obviously you will get multiple options that you know .NET, ASP.NET, MVC, SQL Server, MSBI, right? Azure. Right? If you want to select any of them, you should have a multiple select option. So for that multiple selections, you have something called checkbox, right? And let's say this checkbox here, right, can have some properties, which is your checkbox you can set some text here. Let's say your competence, let's say you have .NET. Now this is one checkbox with text.NET. And you can always align your, sometimes you may want, right, you may also want text at the first and then checkbox, and normally the general pattern is your checkbox and then your text. Right? You can have, because this is a control which is a cached control, right? Cached, which means whenever I click on this, right, if you want to do some action again, you have a post back event. You can see here this. You have a post back event here. If you make it true, right, then you post back event. That is your next property of this. Right? Also, you have some events for this. So you can see by default, whenever double click on this, right, you get check changed. Check change is nothing but whenever you change the state of check, unchecked or checked state, right, it will actually give you, it will trigger that event. So let's take more checkboxes here. Right, for this property, let's say I'm going to give. So see, we have a window positioning options. I hope you have discussed this. So wherever you want to place this, right, we place, these are the default settings which we have. Toolbox always will be left toolbox or SQL sources and all your solution explorer, your model explorer, your properties, right, or your source safe, source connectivities, everything will be at the right. you can always change your position. You can see here when you select on this, right, and you know do your positioning, it will actually set the position, right? So that's how it actually works. You can change positioning of any. Let me close this browser, right? And if you want to be at the bottom, you can make it, right. You make it at the bottom here, you can see, right, or you can drag it anywhere. You can actually keep two windows enabled here. And if you want to be overlap, then you can always do that. See here, you can always do the overlapping here. Cease. Resolution explorer and just to make it both. Now here you can see you have checkbox 2. Let me go to checkbox 2 and text. Let me call it as ASP.NET. And checkbox 3, let's make it as MSPI. Okay. So these are different things you have, and let's say whenever you have multiple checkboxes, let's say whatever you want, that you may want what are all the user what are all user have selected options, right? So let me just take a button, right, and let's say let me give an enter. If you press an enter, right, then it will actually take. You can go to source and take it right here, right? As soon as you enter into your in your design page, it will normally take your break. Right now you have a button which will actually speak about what are all the choices you have selected. Right? So let's take two spaces here, and let me call this button as choose your selections, and let me double click on this. And now what I want to do is I want to actually display items which are selected in this section. Right? So in this choose, what I'll do, I'll just do something like response or right. Let's say whatever are checked. Now how can I check whether my checkbox is checked or not? It's very important to know how to get the status of your checkbox. Right? You can see checkbox. This checkbox is your checkbox 1, checkbox 2, and checkbox 3. Those are the IDs, right? So these IDs are helpful to actually get track of your status. So first we'll see which text box is checked. So here let me take if your checkbox 1, right, is checked. This will give us whether it is checked or not, right? And here what we're going to do, let's take a label again, just here, which is my label. I can change my ID of label. Let's say label tools, right? Now let's go back to a button click. Now here what I'm going to do, I'll just say label course.text is equal to. Now how can I get text of this checkbox? We have a text block, right? Which means your text checkbox 1 is selected. Same way, let's say if because this is a multiple selections, right? You can't have if else. You have to check everything. So if your checkbox 2 dot checked will give you a boolean. That's the reason why I can directly check. Or if you want to go specific, you can always go to this if it is true. So for the boolean values, you don't have to check exclusively whether it is true or not. Just remove it as is. It will actually give you whether it is checked or not. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do this, and let me do plus, which means I want to append the old one here. That means, right, the old text and the new text, which is command 2, checkbox 2, whether it is checked or not. Same way, let me get checkbox 3 dot checked. It is checked or not. Let me where I'll be taking my checkbox. Right. So this is how I can actually get it done. And you can see in my checkbox 1, which is .NET, right, I have an event. Now for others I don't have event, right? So whenever I click on checkbox 1, let's say my label codes dot text, I'll just say it as uh, checkbox 1 dot text select. Just want to show how this event will be triggered. And before that, make sure that you have this auto post active, because it will be by default it will be casting. Right. So let's run this and see how. Now you can see as soon as I click on this, you can see .NET selected because I have action for this. Now I don't have any action for others, so let me click on choose. Now you can see you have .NET, right, and ASP.NET selected. Click on this and choose the .NET ASP.NET selected and check on this, right, and choose. We have .NET selected. Now this is the old one which we are using, right, because we are appending text. So that's the reason why we selected this. Right. Now we have these are checkboxes we have, and you can always. So we have one more property of text checkbox. Let's say this is not read only. So you have many controls in the page, right? You may have to see whenever your page loads, right? See what happens whenever my page got loaded. See, so no control is focused. Only your one control, which is click, is focused. But my by default, let's say this is the control which I want to keep it as a focus. Now, how can I do that? Can I always do that using a focus internal method? So let's say here I don't want the sample text and all. So let's go to new code, and in my page load, right? Let's say what I want is I'm going to check whether it is not is postback, and let's say I want to, whenever my page loads, let's say my cursor I want to be focused on my text box. So we have a method called focus. You can see set input focus to a control. Right? So this is my focus I'm setting. Let's run now. So as soon as my page loads, right? In a load event now you can see directly I can target, right? Because my cursor was directly pointing to the text box. Same way you can have focus to your checkbox 2. Let's say I'm going to take checkbox 1 dot focus. Now when I click on this, so now you can see your .NET checkbox is selected. Now you can see a dotted line. Now it is selected. Now how can I select directly? Press space and unspace it. Right? So this will be selected. So this is how you can actually keep your controls focused. So let's go to the next control. Let's see what is the hyperlink. So basically, hyperlink is like a link label. We normally call it as a link label to like. So it is an information label which will show, but on click on this, right, it will do some action. Now even for your hyperlink, let's go to the properties here. We have something called navigate or post by create, navigate URL, right? So this will actually take you to the page you want. Now you would have already seen this hyperlink in many times. When you go to google.com, there will be small links. You can select your language, or those are nothing but hyperlinks, right? You can actually use a button to move across, and or you can use a simple text to move across. Let's say I'm going to select the page here, which is default text. Right now you can see your navigate URL will be default.js. right? And you can give your hyperlink text. Let's say I'm going to say go to home, right? Let's run this. So here you can see go to home. So when I mouse over this is a hyperlink, you can see, right? When I do mouse over, you can see at the bottom here, you just notice here, this is a status bar of your browser, right? When I mouse over, you can see it will give you a complete URL, like default.asx. Click on that, it will take you to default. And now if you click to go to page, it will take you to page 2. Right? When I mouse over and go to page, you can see whatever post back is going to happen, it shows. Right? It shows that yes, there is a URL being tagged, and it will go to default. Click on this, click on this back. Right? You can move across the pages. So that is your hyperlink which you have. That will navigate through across the pages. So here, see, for every control, right? For every control you see, there will be something called CSS class. Now this CSS class is nothing but your styling class which you can provide. Now this is again comes to CSS, which is cascading style sheets. You can actually create CSS for all the controls, everything as such is. Right? So that now as we are actually in a training mode, but you can see everything is a plain we are seeing, no color, no arrangement, everything. So to do an arrangement, we have to use some styling, right? So that styling I can create it here. We can create a separate styles towards the end of in the course. Maybe I'll show you a few styles on different controls, right? So this is the style we actually provide. Now this will be same across all. Even if you go to hyperlink, you can see there will be CSS style, right? So here you can have this is the main use of your hyperlink to actually move across the pages where you can give links directly, right? So this is your hyperlink which you have. Let's move to the next control. Now let's see. First, let's see the radio button because we have already seen checkboxes, right? Multiple checkboxes, and we have seen the properties called uh, check the property to actually get whether it is checked or not. So same way in design time, if you want to see by default, if you want to make sure one control is checked, so your ASP.put is checked. You have a property here called checked. You can always make it true. Then you can see automatically your checkbox will be checked. If you go to the source, you can see that the property checked will be true. Right now, if you run it right here, it will always say check true. You can uncheck after your program is set. Now it will be by default checked. You can click on that. So that's how. Uh, right now, let's take the next tip and let's see the radio. What exactly is radio? Now your checkboxes are used for multiple controls, multi sections, right? Whereas few times you may want to have you may want to restrict choice to select only one, right? You may want to have. So in that case, if you want to actually make restrict user to select only one option among, right? You may go to radio. So radios are exclusive to select single, and but you have to make multiple radios to actually choose a single. So let's say I have a single radio button in this that you can see the radio button will actually look in this way. Let me make it these places here, right? So again your radio button will be squared, where your checkbox will be squared, so which conveys that you can actually this is a checkbox and you can select many, but your radio button will be rounded where you can actually set one of the multiple radio buttons, or by default it won't have a property because I don't know if I have two radio buttons, right? How would I know these two are related? Obviously I will not. So let's say this is radio button, let's say this is a color, you have to choose one color. Let's say this is a blue and let's say this is something called green. There are two colors, right? Or more than two colors. Right. So this is orange. But I have three different color sets, right? Now this is a simple radio button which you have, right? And let me take a button here to get what are all selected, right? So in this button, let me say it's write something. I'm doing this, right? Now double click on this. Now here, how can I get which checkbox is checked? Now again, by default, if you want to make some action, right, you can always go to post back and make it true. When you make it true, you can always, so even your checkbox have same event called check changed. Right? Whenever you check or uncheck your button, your event will be triggered. For that, you have to make sure your post back is true. Right? Now, so let me take a label over here so that I can actually show some data. Let me go to button here. Now here you can actually check your checkbox radio button 1 dot. You have the same property called check, right? And let's go back, and this is your label, which is label 2. ID is label 2. So I'll use this label 2 dot text is, I can get my radio button text again, right? Whatever is text assigned to radio button, I can get it. So let's say fine. I'm using this. Do some space over here. Again, I would say radio button 2 dot text, sorry, dot checked, whether it is checked or not, right? I'm going to take this, where my label text 2, I'm going to append it, right? Same way, append it with radio button 2 dot text. Same way, if your radio button 3 dot checked is true, I will take it with radio, right? That's on this. Now these are radio buttons. Now you can see that I can click on this, click on this, click on this, and when I say get, you can say blue, green, orange, right? I set one of the color, but here you can see I'm able to set multiple things, right? Different places. Now how can I make it group so that I know that in this complete group you have to set any one of the controls, right? You can always go to the control here, and you have a property called group name. So this is a tagging point of multiple radio buttons to one set. Let's say I'm going to give it as a color set. So this is a group I have. So select your green, give the same group name. Select your orange. Now these three. Now if you go to source, also we have a group name, green set, color set. Now run this. Right, so let me select green here, orange. Now you can see I can select only one of them. Right, click on this, you get only. Click on this here. Right. So it's the, as I'm appending it, right, so it is actually providing this. So we'll do one thing before actually doing something. Let's clear this out. So that the output will be correct. First green, everything orange, blue, right? Because there's only one radio. So this is how we can actually group a few radio buttons into one. Now you can have multiple set of groups, right? So this is one group. You can create one more set of checkbox which are exclusively from color. Let's say we are country. We can select one country where you are staying now, right? So that is exclusive from this, which means this will be one group and that will be some other group, right? But what you are doing across one group, you are actually making, user to select only one set amount. So that is your radio button which you have. And then we have something called something on label. You have seen link button. You see what is link button. Now if you go back here and see properties, right? There is a question for me. What is that? How will you write it when you use selection? Sorry, I didn't get that question. What is that? How will you write it when you use selection if you double click? Double click on what?
Once you select the radio button, you're making a selection, right? So if I'm clicking it again, I'll have to lose the selection.
No, you should not, right? That is the property. See, if I select it and do any clicks, it will be selected. You're only selecting, you're not unselecting a radio button. Radio button.
I was asking if I'm selecting orange now, and if I'm selecting orange again, how will I code it to lose that selection?
If you want to lose the selection, you have to select any one of the other groups.
Okay, if I'm double clicking on orange, I should lose the selection.
No. You are talking about the checkbox, right? So see, checkbox property is to check and uncheck. But radio button, once you select, that's it. It will be selected. And if you want to unselect, then you have to select some other radio button.
Okay.
Okay, that is the basic property of radio button, right? Now click on this option any number of times, right? Or double click it, right? Doesn't matter. It will always give you a checked option. And if you want to uncheck, only option is to move it up and go ahead to other. So to actually answer your question, let me take one more radio button here. So let me take up one more radio button here, let's say, and let me give some name to this. Let me give some name here. So let's go back here. See, select this, and that's it. Check it any number of times. It always. So radio button is just to select. Right? If you select it, it will always stay selected. And if you want others, if you want to unselect it, then why to go to radio button? You can actually go for a checkbox, right? Right. So the property of radio button is you select, and if you want to unselect it, group. There will be a group of other options you have to select, which means you are actually mandated to select any one of them. Fine. So that is your radio button issue. Let's see the link button. Now, if you go back here, you can see link button here again. Right. Now, again, this is something which is used mainly to navigate through URLs. But this is a type of button, but it won't give you a option. If you want to have an event, you always have an event of click, right? You can actually get a few things done in the same page. Now, if you go to hyperlink, right? If you remember, we just discussed about hyperlink to both events. You can see there is no click option for that hyperlink, right? Because hyperlink is mainly used to navigate through pages. But here, if you go to link button, it is used for multi-purpose. You can see there is a click option where you can do something in a same page, right? Instead of using this get button directly, I may use link button, right? So when I double click on this, you can see I can get some option, right? Now in my link button, basically I can also search through pages. You can see there will be all properties same as buttons. Now you have your post back URL. Let's say you want to go to page 2, you can always do that. And click on that. At link button, click on this. Click on go to media. Basically, if you don't want to go with the buttons option, right, you have one more option called link button, right, which will be used. The properties and different actions will be same as your button, but you can actually make it. You can actually use this in multiple ways. Right. And then you have something called image or image button, right? So your image is to select just to show images, right? So drag and drop here image, it will give you by default, but you can always have your image URLs, right? So the resources, if you have the resources here, right? When I say resources, if you have any folder, let's say, let me go to solution explorer here, right? So let me create a new folder, and let's say new folder. Let's new folder here. Let me call it as images. I'm gonna create few resources. Let me add existing item. So if you want to add existing item, right, which means if you have anything in your machine you want to add, let's say existing item, then it will actually go, will take you to the browser window. Let's say go to desktop and let's say I have let's take some like some image here that I've taken, and let's click on this and let's say water image URL. Now this image URL you can actually get it from here. Let's say I've selected this, and let's give that you want to give some height. Let me give some height as 10 px. Right? You can see. Let's give some 100 px. Right? Let's bigger 40 px. That's 27. Right? Now this is some image which I have. Right? So you can actually have this image now, but you won't be able to do any action on it. Right? So you can see I have an image and that's it. This is a simple image which I have. Right? Where in my page, if I want to keep my image on the top, right? Right? Now I may use this image. Right? Which is this. Same way you have something called image button. Let me take that image button. And let's select image URL. Images SreeHub.com. Let's say it's some decent height of some 30. This is the image button here. And let's see right? So this is the image URL. But click on this, right? Can I go? Now you can see there is a hand symbol as this, right? So by default, if there is nothing, you can see it has the same page to do post back. There is a button, so which means your auto post back will be automatically. Now this is a label. This is like a label or an image which you should do. Now here, let's say when I click on this, it should go to some link. How can I do that? Now here again, you have your SreeHub.com, and you can see you want your post back URL, right? So let's say I'm giving something called SreeHub.com directly, which I want to post back. Just on this. So actually, let me click on this. It may give you this because I want to go. Let's give something called right. So when I give a qualified URL, right, now it will take me to the site. So which means in your button, so you can actually give the same to your even normal buttons too. That if you want to actually make it separate, right, you can actually give a fully qualified URL, right? Not just an extension. You have to give complete HTTP and www. At least from here, let me just check whether if I don't give this, whether this is going to work. Let me run this. on this. Okay, we have to give a fully qualified value to this. Let's give HTTP and everything. On this. And click on this. Now it will take you to SreeHub. And so this will give you an option to take you to the actual URL you want, right? But this image will actually give you just an image. Go back. Just image for your page, and this is your image button. Right. So let's go to the next. We will just see different things which we have. Let's go to combo box. Right. Let's take this combo box here. Oops, I just selected checkbox. I want your drop-down list, which is right. Now here you can see that you have many options whenever you drag and drop your combo box. You can select your data source, right, which is directly tagged to your database, let's say, right? You can edit items. When you edit items, you can actually add your data manually. You can see here, let's add it manually for now, right? And then we'll see how to create a data source and how to add it, how to tag this directly to database data set. So let's say here I'm going to create you have a text and a value. Let's say I have say add again. Let's say I'm going to give add again. Let's say I'm going to give orange. I'm just giving few items to the list box. Okay, and I have by default set something. Right. So to run this, right, you can see you have your drop down list ready, where you can select any one of the options here. Right. Also, you can actually make it post back. A few times, sometimes you may have to select some option, like let me edit items. So let's say I have one more item called select, right, where I want to ask, by default I don't want anything. You can see there are indices 0, 1, 2, 3 and all, right? If you want to make this on top, just click on this up button. Right, you can always select any option and arrange your items. So based on the arrangement, as of now I'm actually talking about the static one, right? So your design time you're just giving some static options, right? But you can actually make these things dynamic. Don't worry about that, right? Let me click on OK. So by default you're selecting there, and now let's say enable post back here, or either you can do directly here, or you have a property here, right, which is auto post back. So click on this, automatically it will become true, and right. Now here whenever you select anything, right, it's going to do a post to server, and then it will get back. Let's run this and see, and then we will do some action on post back. Right. So when I click on blue, you can see a post back happen. When I click on this, you can see a page is running, which means my post back is happening. Now what I'll do, I'll take one label over here. Right, label 3. Now here on post back, when I say this, you have an event. You have many events. See, selected index changed. So when I double click on this, I will get that event. Now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to do something called label 3.text is equal to my drop down list 1 dot text. I'm going to set it. So here, let me select blue. You can see. Now this is a complete post back action I'm doing, where it is actually setting things to drop down list whatever I have set. Fine. And also, if you want to set your style of your Dropbox, you can drop down list, you can always do that. So you can do that from your again properties here. So go to properties, main properties. You have something called, you have maybe is that anyways, you will have a skin, I mean the CSS for sure. You will have a CSS here. You go to text box, right? You have something called style here. You can select any style, dashed or not set or anything. Same way for your drop down. I don't know, maybe yeah, the styling part anyways. Visible move. Not a problem. I think this you can actually set it from direct CSS itself because we normally don't set anything on properties. Right? It will just stay as a simple drop down, but we will be doing everything. Now you can see in drop down list, you can see each and every list item. As we have done it as a static, right? You can see in drop down list, each list item will be selected, which you have already seen. So you have already seen this from design, right? When you click on this arrow button, you can see you can edit items, or in properties you always have a collection, right? Even this collections are, will give you an option to add, or directly go to source and you can add list item. List item you have, right? Let's say this is some date, right? Now this will be this will automatically will get added to your collection items for this. But anyway, this is your static collection items which you have mentioned, right? We'll actually see how we can actually tag this dynamically with our with drop list. So normally we few times, right? Sometimes you may have to go with drop down with the static, but most of the times, right, you may have to get it configured from database, right? How either you can get data from the database and then populate it, or read items from file and populate your combo box and different things, or directly connect your data source, right? We'll actually see this data source part in the next class, right? Because we have to create our data sources first, right? So in order to create data sources, we've already seen that in our data part, right? We have many sources which we can actually map, right? We'll see how to map them and get this populated automatically. Right? So this is one thing you have, and let's check out some other called. Let's see required field evaluator. What is this required field evaluator? One more, right? So here you have validation. So when this part is again, anyways, this is a control which is a inbuilt control we have in .NET. But this required field evaluator is something which will give you an option to set whether your you can actually set your control